This video is going to show you the steps that you want to do for lab number 4, your introduction to InDesign. So as you get started here on project 3, which is your multi-page layout, your magazine story that you're going to be doing in the next 3 weeks, this lab is going to show you how to construct kind of the framing of the InDesign pages that you'll do your magazine story layout on. Okay, so your video tutorials for this week, for the week of October 8th, make sure you take a good look at them. They kind of go through the steps about creating a new document, the interface, your columns, gutters, all those kinds of things. So I'm not going to dwell on that a whole lot. I'm just going to kind of show you the steps for this particular lab exercise. And so what we want to do is go into InDesign and create a new document for the project 3. That's going to be a print document. And so we click here on print, and at that point it will know what color model that we're working with and the resolution and things like that, so we don't have to put in a lot of other details like we would with say Photoshop. By default, it's going to give us a letter page size, and that's what you want for project 3, so we're going to leave that the same. I'm going to change our units over here to inches, just because I think it's a little easier for you to think in inches. Picas, by the way, there are 6 picas to an inch if you ever are working with picas. A lot of times column widths and page layout is done in picas. We're going to keep facing pages on. We're going to keep primary text frame off. If you check this, it's going to just automatically put a text frame that covers pretty much the entire page whenever you create a new page, which you don't always want that. I'm going to go with 3 columns here. That's a decision that you're going to make on your own project for project 3, but you probably would want 2 or 3 columns, and you can change this at any time. For the column gutter, the suggestion on the video tutorial is to go up to about 1/4 of an inch, so let's set it to there. And for the margins, we're going to set the margins at, I'm going to move this one up a little bit higher so that it's consistent with your video tutorial. Let's unlock this link so that they can be different in the different settings. So 1 inch at the top. I'm going to go with about 1/2 inch at the bottom. I think in your tutorial it was maybe a little bit less than that, but I'm going to go with 1/2 inch. And then for inside, let's go with 0.375, and for the outside, 0.625 is good. Bleed and slug, we're not going to deal with those in this particular assignment, but that slug has to do with information that's going to be outside your pages, like directions for the printer, and bleeds would be for pictures that are going off the end, which you can do in this assignment. We're just not going to go into the kind of the printing details of it. Okay, let's go ahead and hit create and wait for the computer. There it is. Okay, I'm going to kind of clean up my windows here. Now, when you make a new InDesign document, probably one of the first things you want to check is what workspace you are working in, and the workspace options are right up here near the upper right. And this has interactive for PDF. That's probably the last file project that I was working on, and that's not what we want here, because it's got a lot of things with hyperlinks and bookmarks and things like that, external links. You will be using this workspace in project 5, but for this one, for project 3, we're going to want to go with like essentials, or we're going to start with advanced, actually, because we're going to the advanced workspace will allow us to set up our object styles and our typography styles, and that's one of the things we want to do in this. Let's see, the other thing is, let's look at our pages. And it looks like I only made 1 page. I probably should have made 3 pages when I was setting up the document. No problem. We can go up here to our Pages tab, and I can add pages. And remember, we said that we wanted facing pages. So if I click on Create a New Page, that's going to create a left-hand page. By default, the single first page is a right-hand. And then a second page that we add would be the right-hand page to that. So now we've got 3 pages on there, and we can see them all. We see our margins and our columns that are already set up. InDesign was really developed for multi-page document layout and design, things like newspapers and magazines and catalogs, documents that have a whole lot of pages and that are also probably published continuously. And one of the things that is very nice about InDesign is that it lets you create these styles for how you use type and how you bring in pictures and art and things like that. And those styles are not only saved within the document, you can transfer those or load them into the next document that you're going to work on and so on. So let's take a look at how these different styles work. The object styles panel here already has a basic graphics frame, basic text frame. Text frame is just an empty frame. It has no stroke or fill on it. The basic graphics frame, if we open that up, what we can see is that all these different options that you can see how it's set. The main one to look at is really the stroke, and it's saying that the basic graphics frame, you bring in a photograph, it's going to put a 1-point black stroke around that frame with a tint of 100%. Tint is what InDesign calls opacity. Okay, so that's your basic frame. That's the default. If you want to create new ones, different. If you decide you want 6-point periwinkle around your pictures, have at it. This is where you would do it. You would create a new style, and you would go into that. Into the object style options and things like that, and that's where you would change your style options. You can create as many different object styles and paragraph styles and character styles as you want. And in complex publications, you will often have many styles that the page layout artist will choose from. And if you're going to do that, obviously you probably want to name them so that everybody knows what you're talking about. In this particular lab, we're just going to use the basic text frame for the kind of work that you're doing here. All right, let's close the object styles and let's look at the character styles. And by default, it has none in there, so we're going to create one here. So let's move over to our page 1 here and bring in some text. So I'm going to click on the type tool, and I'm going to draw a text box that is the size of the entire 3-column page here. And I've already copied the text that you'll be using for your project 3. We can see it pasted in there. Now, the first thing you probably notice about this text is that it came in as 1 column. And that seems a little odd because we set up our page to have 3 columns. And that's because these page columns, they're just kind of the grid that we design and lay out from. It doesn't force you to use that 3-column setup on anything. So when you bring in a text box, by default it will be 1 column. And so if you want to change that, and we do, we select the text box, and then we're going to go up to the object menu and select this text frame options. You'd think that would be under the type menu, but it's under the object menu. So we're going to do select text frame options or Command B. And here we can put in that we want 3 columns, and we should also make the gutter the same as what we have for the gutter on our page columns, on our page layout grid. And so that was 0.25. So set those, and then now we've got our column set up, and now we can see that by default the text is running ragged right, flush left, ragged right, and it's set in those 3 columns. Now I'm going to make this text box a little bit smaller. I'm going to drag it down here so that we can put a headline up above it, and we're going to start comparing typefaces here. But watch what happens down in the lower right corner when I make this text box smaller. So I'll drag it down to about here, and all of a sudden we see that not all the text fits, and there's a red square with a plus sign that indicates that not all the text has fit in there. Zoom in a little so you can see it better. And that text isn't missing, it's still there. That's indicating that InDesign is hanging on to it. And so what we can do now is we can go over to our next page and draw another text box. Let's make this one 2 columns. And this is called a page jump or a text box jump, and we can continue this text into the next text box. So let's go up to our text frame options, or Command B, and this time we're going to make that 2 columns, since that's all the bigger I made the box. And got a width of 1/4 of an inch. And now I have to go grab that text. And so it's got a plus sign on it right now. And to do this, I take the direct selection tool. And I click in this box once and then twice. And now you can see that it has picked up the text. And so now all I do is go over to the next text box that I made, and I click in here, and it will drop that text in. And that only fits in 1 column, so if I made it shorter, we can see that it goes up into 2 columns, and align it however we want to. We make it too small, it's indicating that there's still some text missing, and we could create another jump, or we can make our text box bigger. And you can use this text box jump over as many pages, as many boxes as you want. This can go on through an entire publication. So now let's make another text box up here where we would put a headline. And this is my headline, and I'm going to set that at, say, 36 points, maybe a little bigger. Let's go 48. And so now let's start comparing typefaces, and this is something that I want you to do. Spend some time on kind of figuring out what maybe 1 or 2 typefaces, or one typeface that's got a lot of variation and a lot of series in it. But commonly with publications, what the designers will do is have one typeface for the main text, or the body copy, and then a different typeface for display, such as headlines, subheads, maybe page folios, and things like that. And we can see here that in our default text, at least on my version of InDesign, yours might be different, is Minion Pro 12 point. And then when I made the headline, it also kept it as Minion Pro, and I changed the size. So I want you to experiment with some different typefaces, and try maybe 2 to start with. And if you don't find 2 that you think complement each other well, then maybe go with 1. I'm going to go with the typefaces we use for the COM 317 materials, which is Museo Sans for display and Georgia for text. And so I'm going to set up character styles based on those 2 typefaces. So I'm going to click in here on my small copy, my body copy text, and I'm going to do a select all, which is under the edit menu, or it's under or it's Command A. And select all will get all the copy within that block, even the jump here. And so I'm going to change this to Georgia. And let's kind of look at what that looks like, maybe zoom in a bit. And Georgia, that's a nice, Roman serif typeface. And let's play around with some different lettings here. So I'm going to select it all again. And maybe I will drop it down to 11 point, and maybe I'll increase the leading just a bit up to 14, which gives it a little bit more air in between. There isn't necessarily a right or a wrong here, but kind of play around with something that you like. And if I think that looks pretty good, what I'm going to do is I'll select some of this, and then I'm going to go to my character styles. And now I'm going to while I've got some text selected, I'm going to click on Create New Style, that little page there, and then double click on it. And it will, since I've got this selected, this type selected already, it will put that information into the description of the style. So it's saying that my body copy text style is Georgia 11 point with 14 points of leading. And so I'll go ahead and name that. I'll call this text copy Georgia. And that's our text style that's been set up. All right, now let's set up our headline style, and again, you'll experiment with some typefaces that you like. In this case, I'm going to do Museo Sans Serif, which is a rather bold, thick sans serif. And now that I have it selected, I'm going to create a new style. And it's saying that that's 48 point on the Museo Sans Serif 900. And so I'm going to call that headline. And that's my second style. Now, you may have publication documents that are going to be quite complex at some point in your work, and you'll need to set up lots and lots of styles here. But this is basically how you do it. I'm just going to set up the 2 for now, and then you can you can save those and you can load those into other documents right through the options here.